Hey everyone, thanks for coming to our session, Reporting in Microsoft Endpoint Manager, Graph APIs and Log Analytics. My name is Spencer Shumway and I'm a program manager working on the reporting infrastructure and experience in Microsoft Endpoint Manager. My co-presenter is Durga and I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself.
Hi everyone, I'm Durga. I'm a principal engineering manager in the MEM team, working on the reporting infra as well with Spencer.
Today we're going to talk about Microsoft Endpoint Manager reporting, and we'll go over some of those experiences in the console. After that, we'll show how to interact with some of our new Graph APIs, and then we will show how to publish data from Microsoft Endpoint Manager to Log Analytics. Once we're in Log Analytics, we'll show how to join from external data with Azure Active Directory data, and then we will show how to pull that data from Log Analytics into Power BI and make visualizations from there. So let's talk about Microsoft Endpoint Manager reporting the old way, the way we used to do it. If you look at these screenshots that I'm sharing, you'll see there's a lot of columns that don't have sorting. There's no search in a lot of cases. There's no filtering, there's no column select, and then there's no export in a lot of the experiences that you'll see. And one of the most dreaded features that customers hate, or bugs, depending on who you ask, is the load more on search button. The customers were tired of these poor experiences, and if you had a lot of data and you were trying to find a specific column or a specific piece of information, it became very difficult. So we decided we could build something better. And that's where our new reporting infrastructure comes in. So let's look at Microsoft Endpoint Manager reporting the new way. After listening to a lot of customer feedback and aggregating that and trying to see what was most important, we realized that we needed to provide performant server-side search, sorting, and filtering, and export, so you can get access to your data. We also realized that customers needed common UX controls so they could have a consistent experience across the console, whether it's paging or column selection, things like that. And then we also wanted to make it easier to get your data out of the console. So you're not just looking in the UI, but you can import it into your own databases, your own data experiences, wherever you want. With that, we built Azure Monitor integrations, and we built improvements to our export APIs. And I've attached a screenshot here where you can see kind of a combination of all those examples where you've got search across a variety of fields, sortable columns, and export available. Let's take a look in the console and see what that experience looks like. So here we are in the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center. You can see that there's a first-class experience for reports here, and look for more reports to show up here in the future. For now, we can drill into device compliance and see a nice summary to get an idea of what the estate of our device compliance is in our tenant. We have a lot of non-compliant devices here, so it's something we may need to drill into. Let's go a little bit deeper into some of the data. As you can see here, we can make some selections about what kinds of data we want to show up, and we'll quickly get a new data set sorted and filtered on the back end, of course, which is accurate and up to date. You'll also notice that we'll have column sorting available and search across a wide variety of columns. Now, once this report's generated, you'll see that it has indeed returned only the compliant devices to us. And this visualization, again, is hosted from the same data that the report is, so it will be matching and accurate and consistent, again, which is one of the main customer feedbacks. You'll also see across the console within workloads, reports showing up in these monitor tabs, whether it's in devices or apps. And reports here will have, again, a similar experience. For example, the non-compliant devices report, where we can easily filter and get a quick return on the data that we need. You can also search easily again and find the records that are related to your search. We hope you'll enjoy what we've built in the console in regards to reporting, but we also understand that customers need to be flexible with their data. With that in mind, we've built some solutions to enable custom reporting. Let's look at some of those now. We have three main options for getting data outside of Microsoft Endpoint Manager. We have the Graph Export APIs, where you can export data directly from the reports that you'd like. We have Azure Monitor with log analytics integration, where you can configure your reports to publish data to log analytics workspaces, where you can then perform joins, aggregations, and do any custom business logic or alerting that you would like there. Data Warehouse is a MEM-hosted platform for accessing additional historical and aggregate data that isn't exposed in the console. Many of our customers use this today. We won't spend too much time talking about this in our demos, but that is an option as well for custom reporting. So let's take a look at how we should use MEM reporting graph APIs. Historically, we provided a commandlet in the Intune PowerShell SDK that would basically page through every page of the report and download it one page at a time, whichever report you were trying to get. For our medium to large size customers, even some of our small customers, if the report was large enough, this would cause issues. It takes a long time to page through a lot of data, and these calls could take hours. You'd come across throttling, and you'd come across potential network failures, anything like that. So it basically was really unreliable, not as good as it should be, at least. And so we took the customer feedback, and we took that and built a central export API, which the API, all you need to do is provide a specific parameter to tell which report you're trying to export, and you'll receive a quick and full export of all your data in compressed CSV format. So let's take a look at how to interact with this export API. So here's an example of what the export API looks like. I'm here in Graph Explorer, and you'll see that every export job comes from this API. The way to specify what report you're getting is this report name filter. We're specifying devices here, so we're going to get all our devices. And then there's some optional parameters like filter and select that we can list. And they're not required, but you can put them if you want. So let's run this and see what happens. So make the request, and we get a response showing, oh, here's the ID of our report. So we've generated a report for devices. So let's take that report ID and go check the status of the report as it's generating. Now you call the same API just with a report ID parameter and a get call, and you can see what amounts to the status of the report. So you can see here that this report is still in progress, or it's being generated. So you can check again, and we'll see that it's completed. And as it's completed, it provides us with a URL. We can take this URL right now if we want, paste it in the browser, and download this data directly. I also want to show how you could do this over PowerShell script. This PowerShell script uses the Intune PowerShell SDK and has some one-time setup, and then each time the module is used, setup to authenticate with your Azure AD credentials. Once you've done that, you'll see we build a post body almost exactly like we did in Graph Explorer. We have some optional parameters that I'll leave out to show that we can just make a default request for the report name devices. And then we'll follow the same logic that I showed in Graph Explorer, which is we create an export job request by calling the export job API. We then return an export job ID, and we query that export job ID as part of the export job API until we see that it's completed. So once we see the status is completed, we'll write the compressed CSV file to whatever directory you're running the PowerShell script from. So let's run the script now. So you can see we're creating export job request, checking in on the status of the export job, which means we're pinging the export job API with a GET using the export job ID parameter. And we'll ping that every couple seconds until we get a completed status. And then you'll see here that it completed, and we wrote the file out to our directory. And this is the file. So if we now look in our directory, we can see that the file did indeed download, and it's there, and it took only a few seconds. So pretty nice. Now that we've shown you how to interact with the export APIs through Graph Explorer and through Powershell, let's take a look at what it looks like to publish log analytics data from Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Azure Active Directory. I'll hand it over to my colleague Durga.
Like Spencer mentioned, MEM has a capability to export data into log analytics. So we'll be going through a demo where we will be exporting MEM data as well as Azure Active Directory data into log analytics and doing a simple join on them. What we have here is the landing page of MEM. To go to the diagnostic settings, you would go into reports and then hit diagnostic settings. You could add a diagnostic setting. We have 3 different syncs you can send data to. One is log analytics, one is storage, and the other one is event hub. We have 3 different categories of logs you can subscribe to. We will be showcasing device compliance org in this demo. So because this takes a little bit of time to set up, I have already done that, and data should be flowing into log analytics. You should be able to go into the log analytics section over here and start playing with the data. So if you were to take a look at this data, let's take 10 records and see how the structure of data is. You should see several columns such as the device name, the user ID, compliance state, operating system, what is the owner type, etc. Now let's see how many compliant versus non-compliant devices there are. So I'm summarizing by compliance state, and this will tell me I have 137 non-compliant devices in my data. And let's see why so many devices are non-compliant. So if we were to take that string and then filter, we would see a bunch of records. Now, going through these records, just glancing through them, it is not very apparent why we have so many non-compliant devices. So let's try to summarize this by maybe non-compliant devices are restricted to a particular OS. Apparently not. Looks like they are distributed across different types of OSs we have. What about owner type? Does that yield anything? Not really. They seem to be equally divided between company and personal devices. So in order to make progress, it looks like we need an external data set. In this particular case, we can go into Azure Active Directory and set up diagnostic settings over there to see if a join against AAD data yields more interesting information. To set up diagnostic settings, you would go into diagnostic settings in the Azure Active Directory blade. Over here as well, as you can see, I have already set this up, but there are a bunch of categories that you can subscribe to. I have subscribed to sign-in logs, which are pretty interesting because they have a lot of detail detail about the sign-in itself. So once I have set that up, I can go back into my log analytics workspace and start querying those. So if I look at my sign-in logs, there are again a bunch of fields I can look at. One of them seems to be location. There's a property bag that is device detail. Let's see if we can join these two. Looks like there is a device ID that I may be able to join against. Let's first try to extract this device ID. Because this is in a property bag, we are going to make a simple transform. And we are going to essentially extract device ID. So once you do that, you are able to look at the device ID. So if you take a look at that, go all the way to the end, you have successfully extracted the device ID. So now we can join. So let's join these two sources and see how that data looks like. So now we have a nice join on device ID. Now let's try to see if that location yields anything. So initially, let's try to see how many different locations our users are signing in from. We apparently have 6 different countries that users are signing in from. If we were to look at only non-compliant devices, let's see how many countries show up. Looks like when it comes to non-compliant devices, only US is the one with no non-compliant devices, and all the other locations seem to have non-compliant devices. One of the common reasons that this happens is if you did not target a compliance policy for devices in regions other than US. We do see this happen a lot of times, something for you to consider. Now we are going to try to export this data into Power BI. So let's quickly run this. The way you would do that is go to export and then export this to Power BI. And now I'll hand it over to Spencer to take a look at how we can use log analytics data, export it into Power BI, and gain additional insights.
So here we have the query exported from log analytics that we can insert into Power BI to get data from log analytics. Let's go to Power BI and get data and a blank query. And we want advanced editor. We can paste this query directly into the advanced editor. And we'll just call it query 1. And you can see that right away it grabs the data for us. It's exactly the same data that Durga was querying in log analytics. So we'll close and apply here. Something to note is there are some limitations as to how much data you can query from Power BI. And we'll link in the attached documents of this presentation some information about that. But for our purposes, there's no problem. And you can see that our data has indeed showed up. So let's make a little visualization here of what this should look like. I want a map visualization, make it full. Let's look at location. Let's look at compliance. And let's look at the count of compliance statuses as the size metric. And here we get an interesting visualization showing us where our sign-ins are occurring and what types of device statuses are occurring on those sign-ins. And as Durga pointed out earlier, our US sign-ins have no non-compliant devices. It's actually kind of hard to see that because the colors are a little confusing. So let's control some of the colors there. Yeah, blue's good there. Call this red. And we'll say not evaluated is gray. Okay, so this is a little bit easier to understand what's happening. But as you can see, our regions outside of the US have quite a few non-compliant devices, whereas the US doesn't have any. So this might lead us to rethink how we're targeting our compliance regionally and take some actions based off of that. Now let's take a look at another simple visualization we could use to understand our device compliance state in sign-ins. We'll use a stacked bar chart, make that a little bigger. We'll use compliance as our legend, our values will be count, and our access is location. And we can see that for Great Britain, we've had 80 sign-ins, and roughly about a third of those were not evaluated, and a third were not compliant, and a third were compliant about. But what if we wanted to see like the percentages of what the device compliance state was for each of these? Well, then we need to create a measure. I've already typed out the measure query. We'll create it here. And we'll see that that worked. So now we can go back to our visualization, and instead of looking at the counts, we can look at the percentages for each location. And this gives us insight into the percent of total not evaluated, the percent of total not compliant, and the percent of total compliant devices for each location. Now we're able to see that Great Britain has about 34% compliant devices, whereas the US is almost at about 60% compliance. And that's just one of the useful things you could do. There's many more things, obviously, and we hope that you start exploring these things and let us know. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our demos of the MEM reporting console, the export APIs that we've built, and log analytics integration with both Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Power BI. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we've attached our contact information so you can reach out to us directly with any questions, comments, or feedback.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Bye-bye.